Alrighty then, today is going to be some dirtying and a little bit of rust. If anybody gripes about the rust, let me just point out that aluminum, although the prop may have been, really just wouldn't hold up to the heat and pressures involved. So rust would be a little bit, or a metal other than aluminum would be the way they would have had to have gone. So, we've got our worn metal. This is an oil pastel. Nothing special. Don't even know the brand anymore. This should be a burnt sienna. And we're just going to rub it on here just a little. See where the paint's bubbling. Anybody that's had anything that rusted knows that the rust is going to start to show through where paint's bubbling. Taking a coarse brush and getting a bit forceful with it here. And this is going to help smear, remove a little of the excess, allowing the pastel to blend in. But rust gets a little more complicated than that. You're going to need some actual red in there. Not a lot actually shows up when we're done if we do it right. I'm just using my fingertip. There's no reason not to unless you're worried about dirty fingers. Going to bring out our sienna again. You can also use a Q-tip. There we go. It's already starting to look a little rusty there. Let's bring in a darker brown for some dirt. Just using my finger to kind of smear it, streak it a bit. And I want a little more of the silver to show back through, so I'm going to use my fingernail to scrape off some of the pastel. It's not looking too good yet, is it? This is where we bring in some chalk pastel. I've already scraped it with a knife to make it into a powder. Put it on my brush. The oil pastel lays the groundwork to help it stick. You will have to use a clear coat in the end. In order to get it to stay on. It's showing up a lot brighter on the camera than it is in person. Now we don't want rust on our plastic clipboard. So there we go. Like I said, a clear coating will be necessary, or this is just going to rub right off of there. Another neat one you can do with the oil pastels is make the paint look like the color has faded. Here's a gray. And I'm putting that on heavy. Real thick there, right? Now, paint will typically fade in these big flat areas, and it'll fade less around the edges and around other objects. Smooth it out and blend it in a little more with my fingertip. I accidentally got a little brown in here, which is alright, just makes it look dirtier. I'm being very forceful here with the Q-tip to remove so that we get a nice faded transition to the darker black again. Now, I'm going to take a little white. And there we have some very faded paint. If you go a little too heavy by accident, just grab yourself a black. And look at that, we're getting all nice and dark again. There we go. It's nicely faded paint like it's been laying out in the sun. Or just age has gotten to it. It's starting to gray, dull. Forgot to brush the, grabbed the wrong brush there. It's alright, we can work with it. See? As our late friend would say, a happy accident. Needs to be peeled off a bit. Alright, because we're going to get a dirt buildup around the edges of some things here. But we want more than dirt than that, so we break out our chalk pastels again in a nice powder. Use a couple of different colors of brown. There we go. It's dirty. It's that simple. It's really, really that easy. Let's see, is there another good spot to do here? Now your heatsink definitely wouldn't be getting any rust on it. That would be aluminum for sure. We want any of that brighter red to really blend in, because there's not going to be, if you look at rust, there's going to be little specks of a brighter red. But for the most part, we are going to have that burnt sienna look. Bringing in my powder. Another way I've seen this done, if you want to get chunky rust, is you spray a clear coat or a hairspray on it first. And then kind of take a knife, pen, a file, and scrape this towards what you want it on, and the flakes and chunks are going to fall on it, land, and stick. Brush off some of the excess, and then clear coat it again to seal it. And what I'll do in the end is, when I'm all done, after I've sealed it and the sealer is dried, I will go over some spots again with my silvers. You can see, like right here, all the rubbing with the oil pastel has taken the silver that we put on in the last video right on off of there. And we're going to want to bring some of those shiny highlights back so it looks like it's still getting used and scratched and dirtied. Having trouble getting this camera to focus here. You see, I just tapped that with my fingertip a little bit right up here. So the silver's still showing. Something I need to fix is last time I accidentally got some paint. Yeah, it's not really coming off very easily there. Because this is an area I would especially expect See, I would expect this top and the two sides the most, especially the heatsink side, because if the pack is sitting, it's going to be heatsink side up and this side up. This side and the bottom are going to be shaded with the way that it'll be sitting on the pack. So I wouldn't expect to see as much fading showing up in our paint on them. And you see, when I initially do this with a brush, it leaves brush streaks in the oil pastel. And it just doesn't spread as nice. That's why I always resort to the tried and true, just using my fingertip. There really is no rhyme or reason to the patterns and that I use when squiggling that on there. I think it just kind of comes instinctually from practice. I first used this technique on some Warhammer miniatures that I was making for a friend. Gave his tank some very nicely faded paint. We've got a little bit of the white there where we don't want it. There we go. Blend that a little better. And now the top of this is faded. We've got some bubbled spots here. Going to get those with our oil pastel. What we really want is the pastel to go into the deeper spots, and we want to rub it to get the lighter spots off. And again, we want to get that off of the clipboard. Strange, it really does show up more pronounced on the camera than it does in person. Now for our clipboard, I do want to dirty that up. Although I do need to replace the label. This one didn't print right. I'm using the powdered chalks first, just a little bit. Because like on the printed plastic, it's going to get better into some of these nooks and crannies around the lettering. And yes, I'm going right away in here with more than one color. I'm smearing this around. Something I want to tell you guys is, believe it or not, before I ever do any of this on my actual project, I find some junk to practice on first every time. One, to make sure everything's working okay, especially my airbrush. And two, to make sure I'm still remembering just what it is I'm doing. You don't do something for a few months like this, and it can become pretty easy to kind of forget, lose track of how to even do it. This dirt, so we're going to put some scratches in there. There we go. You know, my beautiful all-clad paint coloring. And I'm covering it in oil pastel. The humanity. Wait 1 second. If I can find it over here, there's another little dirty trick that sometimes works out really well. Some kind of makeup pencil. Don't really know what it's supposed to be used for. But you can get these pretty cheap. Even Dollar Tree sells them. What's going to be nice about this is they are extremely soft. Softer than the oil pastels. Perhaps even a little too soft for the pencil sharpener. Ugh. It's really gunked it up. Because I want to get in the top here. And yeah, see how I already bore it back down to the wood. But because you can sharpen it to a bit more of a point, you can get it down in some of these areas that are a little trickier to reach. And there you have a very, very dirty clipper. Too dirty, in fact. Which is easy to have happen because this stuff is so soft and easy to smear around. And that is where your friendly neighborhood rag comes in handy. There we go. I hope this video was helpful to some of you. Again, it's there's nothing special about the brands of any of these products that I used this time. It's just whatever. Oil, chalk pastels, makeup pencils. For all I know, those could be for eyebrows or something. I just found it laying around. Good luck to everybody out there.